Hey everybody, welcome to this old TJ. Today I'm going to be installing my rock hard 4x4 rear bumper along with the frame brace kit to come with it. We started by removing everything that had to come off before reassembly starts. And see the next link above for removing the fuel tank. In my rock hard packet I've got the rear frame braces come wrapped up, along with the bag of bolts required. We will start by getting our frame braces installed. And once they are in place, we will then be ready to start test fitting the bumper and marking the rear cross member for the additional holes. And like the other pieces that come with this, these are powder coated black and look fairly decent. And they simply slip up in here. There's 2 bolt holes already there that they mount with, and then you can drill this third hole to get extra support. So a little bit wobble, doesn't feel like it fits totally flat, but that's all right, because I think these are the last bolts to truly get tightened up. So we can start here. I'll see how much of this I can wipe off, and we will mark the location for the third bolt hole. But first I'm going to check fit, make sure these bolts do actually clear through here. And to do that, I'm simply going to put them from the outside inward. So the bolts absolutely fit, which leads me to believe that these will also slip in there without a problem. And they do. So we'll put one in there to support things. I'll grab my silver Sharpie and we will get the next location marked, and then grab the center punch and a drill bit and get this thing started. So again, I got 1 bolt in, 2 bolts in, lines up with the rear bumper. So with the silver Sharpie, I don't know if I'll show up on the camera, but I got the general location of that slot marked. So I'm going to center punch it roughly in the middle of that slot, or maybe a little biased towards the rear. And once we have it center punched, we'll be ready to start drilling it out. I'm just going to use my step bit to work up to the proper hole size. I'll count the steps on my drill bit to get up to the size I need. It's like 6 steps and we'll be through. We can check bolt fitment here. I don't want it too big. I'll grab a rag and a little acetone and wipe that off and hit it with a little paint. I'm using some primer. So next up, they say to use a 5/8 boxed in wrench to fish these things up through the frame rail and into place and start getting them into position. And I'll link another video here above. If you struggled with the removal of a factory trailer hitch, like I did, the factory bolts for that came attached to a backing plate that was cut with a square hole to allow the use of a carriage bolt for that assembly. Mine had rested together and were a pain to get out, but I'll link a video above here, show you what I ended up doing to take care of that problem and get all 4 of those out so they're just not loose and floating around and they're rattling down the road every time you hit a bump. So I'm going to attempt to start with the forward-most hole. If I can get this up in there and get that bolt in there. So grab the washer and a nut. Get the forward one started. And then I will repeat with the upper bolt hole, which will be the one that I just created. And the last one will be the lower hole. Now with 3 of these started, check again, our rear bumper bolts do actually come through. So we can move to the other side and repeat there. And like the other side, before I start, I'll give the frame a little bit of a clean up here. Just need it cleaned off so I can mark that. So I can mark that third location where that extra bolt hole will go. This time my location came out a lot clearer. I think cleaning the frame definitely helped that. So at this point we should be ready to put a little WD-40 on there and make our next hole. Yeah, it definitely has about the same amount of wiggle room as the factory holes. So we'll clean the thing up again and get this side started. Got the first one in, I'll move on to number 2. And finally, we'll get the third one in. We're ready to start on the bumper side. For starting these, it says we're going to be dropping the bumper onto 4 bolts to get it aligned, make our next marks. And once we have those marks, we'll be ready to drill our next set of holes. So then we'll break open the hardware kit. We'll get this bumper, see if we can lift it up on here and get it to set in place. And they do offer 2 mounting locations for this thing. There are multiple slots. You got a lower position and a higher position. And I am going to go ahead and mount mine on the higher position, which in this case is the 2 lower holes. All right, got one started on the driver's side. Now I'll move over and get this passenger side one started. Which does look like it's going to be a little bit more of a pain due to the fact that the swing out tire carrier lock, if you look, this is where the swing out tire carrier comes around, and it is firmly welded in place directly above our bolts. So this side may take a little more finesse to get something on there. And it also does mention centering it up before you mark those locations. So I'll find something to use as a straight edge and try and center it up off of the body. Alright, it is in place and does slip a little bit side to side, so I'll find that straight edge, get it marked up, and drill our holes. It looks like I'm using a piece of angle iron as a straight edge just off the side of the body. It looks like butting it up against the straight edge will put it almost dead on. Alright, this thing is definitely squared up in here, but for the life of me, I cannot get the right angle with the Sharpie. So I'm just going to use a pick to try and reach in there and scribe the outline as best I can. And repeat with the pick again. And now I'm realizing I did not do the second hole on the passenger side, so I might as well come back and do it instead of finding out after the fact. So now we're on to the next step. Pull the bumper back off, center punch a couple spots, and drill some more holes. So the scribe lines, I don't know how well they'll turn out here, but you can kind of see where they are fairly clearly. That's the driver's side and the passenger side. So I think I'm going to like the fact I did that better than trying to wedge a Sharpie down in there. And it should be a lot easier to center punch these things since I'm not trying to work my weak hand underneath the bumper. And I'm just going to try and make them dead center. Plenty of room behind to get to both of them. Hit it with a little WD-40. The cross member seems like it's going to drill a lot faster than the frame rail. And that hole touches each side of the scribe line about evenly, so it should be about perfect. And we'll check our bolt fit. And then we want to step that top hole up just one more notch. Gives it just a little bit of wiggle room. So with that, we got the driver's side done. We'll move back over to passenger side. And I'll try and get the top one punched here. And back to the drill. All right, clean that up, shoot a little bit of paint on each of these. I'm ready to start bolting the bumper on. So after sorting through the hardware pack, it looks like there's a back flat washer, a front flat washer, a lock nut, and the nut that goes on each one of these. But in between the two, they also come with these thick backing plates. So these will drop down in there. The way I'm mounting mine, it'll go like this, and that'll sandwich this entire bumper assembly between the bumper itself, the cross member, that backing plate, and that'll be a pretty strong installation. So for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and get these bolts with their backing washer on each side to have something to set the bumper on. And there's going to be 4 nuts that are slightly longer than the others. I'll show you what I mean here. So you can see that one's just a bit on the shorter side. And the longer one's going to be the one, I believe, that will go through that backing plate. So now with our bolts through, some nuts readily available to thread on to hang the thing there while I maneuver around it, we'll grab the gloves, lift this bumper back, and get it back up on here. Alright, got one on the driver's side enough to hold it in place. Get one on the passenger side here, then we'll get those inner bolts started. Alright, it's not going anywhere. For the inner bolts, the way they want this set up, you take your little extra plate that it comes with, the bolts with the knurled washer backing thing. 2 of those go through, and then both of these go through from the rear. And on the front, then, they will get a washer, a lock nut, and a nut. So if I can get these 2 up under here, and this is probably going to be a lot easier since I took out the fuel tank. I can literally just reach up underneath there and feel around for where to get these things started. So I got those 2 started. They're both through. So now it'll be a matter of grabbing a nut, put on the front of them. I'm going to use the slightly thicker washers on the inner bolts where we drilled the holes. So again, it's going to be one of the thicker washers, the lock nut, and then a nut. And I have the first one started, so I'll grab the next set. So thick washer, lock washer, and then finally our last nut for the inside. Make sure I can still slide it back and forth. So we have both the inners on this side. We'll do the inners on the passenger side. Then we'll do those outers. That may be a good time to mention, if you enjoy this kind of stuff and want to help us out to do it, you can always hit that like button. If you want to see more of it, you can always hit the subscribe. All right, top bolt is started. I'll get down here on the lower one, and after I get this nut on, we will have the inner reinforcement plate on the back with the heavy bolts coming through, and then we'll be ready to move on to the outer edges. All right, so those are on. I'm not screwing them down tight yet, so we still have to align this thing side to side, and there's plenty of room to do that. So now we're on to the outer ones that go through those frame reinforcements. And I guess I can go ahead and start over here on the passenger side. And this is the side where I said that it is underneath the swing out plate and lock. So it's going to be a matter of fishing up under there with my hands to get everything on, which may add a little bit more difficulty to it, but we'll find out. All right, lifted that one up just a hair. And was able to get it through there. All right, I managed to get the flat washer on. Let's see if I can get the lock washer up there on this. And those are both on. Now to get the nut started. There we go. All right, I got the top one started. Flat washer, lock washer, and the last nut. Everything is still plenty loose here at the moment. I think before I start shifting it back and forth, I'm going to tighten it up. See if I can draw it up a lot tighter than it currently is. I don't know how well it shows, but there's a pretty sizable gap in there at the moment. So my fingertip gets down in there. The flat washer's on. So I can get the lock washer on. And then this side is still loose enough. If I can hold the nut, I can actually turn the bolt from the back side with no problem. So now we're back to squaring things up a bit. And what I found when I did the straight edge earlier, is that on mine, if I put my piece of angle iron flush up against the side of the tub, it pretty much extends flush to the end of the bumper here. So I'll grab that, show you what I'm talking about, and we're ready to start tightening some bolts. And it's going to be hard to see on this side because of the license plate. So you get a better view on the passenger side. But my stick of angle iron flat on the side of the tub, you can see it overhangs, which is barely off here. So I'll bump this over just a notch. Now you can see how that just slips like right by there. So now we'll head over to the other side, see if we got the same alignment. And if we do, we'll be ready to start bolting things down. So if you look, again, pretty much flat on the side of the tub. It runs right by there. So I think that's about as squared up as we were going to get this. So next step will be, where exactly do I start with the tightening? I'm going to start with the ones that are on the cross member on the inside. So that's a 5/8 bolt head. And then I believe an 11/16 wrench to hold it. All right, so I got my 5/8 on the impact gun. So it's a matter of getting it up under here. Making sure I'm set to tighten. Alright, bolt one is now tight. So I can get the second one on this side. So this may end up actually just being easier to hop under there to do. I can actually see a little better when I'm working with. So those passenger side inners are in firmly now. Let's move on over to the driver's side. And with that, that bumper is on there. Now I just got to do the outer bolts. Well, it definitely seems to have drawn the backing plate up on there tight. So we'll go for the lower one now. And I can't really see much of a gap, but I'll double check them all before I finish it up. And back to our last few on the driver's side here, and we're ready to move along. All right, to show you what I was talking about on this backing plate. You can see that it's cinched up pretty well firm against the back of this. It may have a little bit more room it could go, but the bumper's definitely flush. And I honestly can't tell if that's weld material in there. It feels like it is. I think it's metal on metal. And the impact gun really doesn't screw around. So now it's a matter of going ahead and tightening down these frame support brackets. I'm going to do them the same way. Hit them with the impact a couple times here. I'm sure they'll be there for a long time to come. But before I do, I will need to grab the next size up on my socket. As I forgot, this is the nut side, not the bolt side. Those things are firmly in place. One side left to do, and I think we can call the bumper at least done. So we're over to the passenger side. We're doing the same thing we did on the driver's side. And I'm going to say with that, we've got the bumper at least on here. It is cinched down good and tight. And this puts us probably about 2 hours into this part, just getting the bumper bolted on with the mounting and marking and drilling and mounting and re-drilling and going around and trying to film again. So, and keep in mind I have the fuel tank out, so you can kind of see those backing plates. You can see the bottom of it at least, that backing plate with the bolt that goes through it. So this thing is pretty firmly on here and frame tied. So it should make for a very solid rear bumper. And I'm probably only going to be running a 35 on the carrier. So getting the carry on here will be next. You can see the things on here lined up pretty well with the tub, bolted pretty solidly down. Well, on my rush to finish this bumper install, I missed a critical little piece, so I'm coming back and fixing it. When I was cleaning up from the job, I discovered the backing plates that are supposed to go in. I had inadvertently forgot to put in. I've checked all across the row though, all across the bumper, and the bolt holes line up perfectly. So it should be a pretty quick recovery here. I just got to spin nuts off of each location, put the backing plate in, then put the washers, nut back on, tighten everything back up. So I'm hoping this isn't going to take too horribly long to do, but just wanted to show that that type of thing does happen. So let's get it corrected and wrap up this part of the bumper. And the first ones did come off in a hurry. I did definitely want to have these backing plates on here though, because that adds a whole nother layer of steel to sandwich this thing in here. So we have the first one on, so now it's a matter of cinching those up. Didn't take too horribly long. All right, one down, 3 to go. So the next one here might be a little bit more of a challenge since it's the ones that are in the drilled holes through the cross member. And the hardest part of this is getting all this stuff lined up and on here without dropping it. And then having it go rolling across the garage floor. Which the last lock nut I just dropped, I don't even have any idea where it went, but it hit something solid in metal because I heard the distinct ting when it hit. I get the backing plate lined up flush with the top there. So should be ready to tighten these things back down, then move on to the passenger side. Driver's side done, now with the backing plates, so over to the passenger side and we'll get this thing wrapped up. We'll start with the inner bolts on this side. Again, having the fuel tank out makes this a whole lot easier to deal with, because finding this out after I would have put the fuel tank back up would have not been a fun find. One plate left to go, and this will be the one that is a little bit more of a challenge, just due to the location being down underneath the swing out tire plate. At least they're easier to get to because they're not crammed up underneath the tub and the cross member. It is going to be easier though to take that lower bolt out to do this, to be able to get a wrench on it. Alright, managed to get the flat washer on. Let's see if I can slip up in here and get the lock washer back on this. Got it in place. Alright, I have the top bolt in place. I'm going to slide the rear one through. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten that top one down before I even attempt to put the washers and nuts on the lower one here. I got the little plate up flush. We'll tighten it down now. And then for the last one, we'll get the bottom washer set on, the final nut. I'm trying to do this one blind. It's take a little bit more patience, especially since I'm not underneath the Jeep. I finally got it. So, cinch this one down, and then the bumper part of the install is done. There we go. Bumper is finished. Now, with both backing plates, you can kind of see the top of it here. And then the other one's right here. Now with all 4 backing plates installed on the back side, and the 2 small backing plates are on the inside of the cross member where we had to drill the holes. So finally, that actually wraps this one up. Next video, I'll be going ahead and getting the tire carrier set on the post and finishing that portion of it up, along with the remaining little bits that go with that. Now, if you like this kind of stuff, hit like, hit the subscribe button. There'll be plenty more coming. So thanks for watching.